Hello, my name is Mary, and I'm 42 years old. I've been married to my husband, Charles, for a decade. We started off working together, but now we're employed at different branches of our company. Charles is known for his responsible demeanor at work and is quite popular among his colleagues. He exudes confidence and ambition, always striving to present a strong image. In contrast, I tend to be quieter and less conspicuous, which made it all the more surprising when Charles, with his dynamic personality, took an interest in me. After 3 years of dating, he proposed with a lavish bouquet of roses, making me feel deeply cherished, and I accepted without hesitation, eagerly anticipating our life together. However, Charles soon revealed a twist in our plans. He wanted us to live with his parents. Though hesitant, he convinced me that his parents were welcoming and excited about the arrangement. Reluctantly, I agreed. For the past 8 years, I've lived with my in-laws in what was once solely my husband's home, an arrangement I hadn't envisioned for married life. My days begin early, often with my mother-in-law criticizing minor things like how I clean the front door. Despite my efforts to prepare breakfast for the family, her constant complaints persist as she heads off to work, leaving me to hurriedly address any issues, feeling reduced to mere house help. This routine involves waking up at 6 a.m. to manage household chores and cook, while my mother-in-law remains at home all day without contributing. After a long day at work, I return to prepare dinner, and by bedtime, I'm so exhausted that I fall asleep immediately. This relentless cycle leaves me constantly worn out and stressed, while my mother-in-law relaxes in the living room, enjoying the breakfast I made and reminding me to maintain cleanliness to keep up our neighbors' good opinion. Despite ongoing challenges and a lack of support from my husband in these domestic conflicts, this repetitive cycle seems unending. My father-in-law tends to ignore the mistreatment I face, burying himself in his newspaper and seeming oblivious to the tension. The relentless stress since moving in with my husband's family has taken a severe toll on me. I've lost significant weight, and my menstrual cycle has ceased, making it impossible for us to conceive. Although my mother-in-law is a substantial source of this stress, I'm blamed for our inability to have children. I once took pride in my appearance, but now I hardly recognize the woman in the mirror. The constant criticism and my dramatically changed appearance have plunged me into a deep depression. I've grown so accustomed to yielding to her demands that I've become completely submissive, feeling numb and lacking the energy to even consider leaving. The pain deepened when I received devastating news. My father had passed away unexpectedly in an accident. It had been ages since I last visited my family home, mainly because my husband and mother-in-law disapproved whenever I mentioned wanting to go. Regret filled me for not spending more time with him, and I knew I needed to attend his funeral. When I told my husband and mother-in-law, they coldly responded, "We're not going. Let your family handle it." Before I could even finish my plea, their heartless reaction left me trembling with anger and grief. All I could manage in response was a quiet, "Understood." Many people attended my father's funeral. He was self-employed and had many connections, and the air was filled with tears, showing just how beloved he was. My mother, who hadn't seen me in a long time, was shocked by my frail appearance. "Mary, what happened? You look so thin," she exclaimed with worry. "Are you sick?" Her distress was palpable, and she burst into tears, terrified at the thought of losing another loved one. "No, Mom, I'm not sick," I reassured her, trying to calm her fears. I took a moment to myself in the waiting room, reflecting on my recent years. The lack of comfort and support from my husband and mother-in-law, even during such a critical time as my father's death, only fueled my anger further. I decided it was time to confide in my mother about my struggles at home. Living with my in-laws has been more challenging than I ever anticipated, particularly due to the constant bullying I endure from my mother-in-law. It's wearing me down. During our candid conversation, I shared these feelings with my mother, who listened with deep concern. "I'm glad you're not physically ill, but this doesn't make me feel any better," she said. "Is this why you hadn't been visiting?" I nodded, confirming her suspicion, which only deepened her worry. She handed me a piece of paper and urged me to look at it and think carefully about my next steps. It was my father's will. He had always been thorough and cautious, preparing it just in case. As I read through the document, my heart skipped a beat when I stumbled upon a line mentioning an inheritance of $5 million. The shock of such a large sum momentarily lifted my spirits, sparking a flicker of hope. With this money, I could build my own house and leave my in-laws' place. The thought filled me with a sudden rush of excitement and relief. I continued with my usual household chores, but now my mind was consumed with plans for independence. The house seemed to get messier on the days when I was preoccupied with dreams of freedom, as no one else appeared inclined to pick up the slack. The thought of the $5 million inheritance was a constant distraction, even amidst the tense atmosphere at home. Despite everything, my desire to stay with my husband Charles remained strong. One evening, after his parents had retired for the night and it was just the two of us, I decided it was time for an open conversation. "There's something I need to talk about," I began, breaking the silence. Charles looked at me with an expectant expression. "It's about my father," I continued. "I've come into an inheritance." "Oh, how much?" Charles asked, curiosity evident in his voice. "It's $5 million, I revealed. Charles's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and excitement crossing his face. "He left you that much? That's incredibly generous," he commented before pausing and adding, "We should discuss how we might use this money." I felt a surge of relief at Charles's receptiveness. This was the moment I had been waiting for, to discuss our future and the possibility of moving out from under the oppressive shadow of my in-laws. But before I could voice my ideas about using the inheritance to build our own home, Charles interjected with a shocking suggestion. "We need to transfer that money to my mom's bank account right away," he declared. I was stunned. "Why would we do that? The inheritance is mine. It wouldn't be right to give it to your mom," I said, unable to believe what I was hearing. I responded with a laugh, hoping Charles was just teasing. But his reaction was immediate and fierce. He slammed his hand on the table. "What are you talking about? A wife's money belongs to her mother-in-law," he exclaimed. His words were so outrageous that I struggled to believe he was serious. His stern expression sent a chill through me. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand," I replied, bewildered. All I wanted was to discuss the possibility of building a house for ourselves. But Charles wouldn't let me speak further. He insisted that my inheritance should go to his mother, and his insistence left me reeling. That night, I was too shocked to sleep. The next morning, while making breakfast, Charles and my mother-in-law confronted me with angry expressions. "Mary, I heard about the $5 million inheritance, and you said you wouldn't give it to me. Who do you think you are?" my mother-in-law demanded, her voice dripping with indignation. Charles had already informed her about the inheritance, and she was adamant. "Stop arguing and transfer the money to my account now. A daughter-in-law's money is our money," she asserted. Their intent to seize the inheritance was unmistakable, and despite my objections, they continued to pressure me. Eventually, it fell silent. That's when Charles produced a piece of paper. "You're getting carried away just because you've come into some money. I'm the one who's been supporting you. If you don't change your attitude, it's divorce," he threatened, holding up a divorce form already signed by him. "Take this and go back to your parents' house if you apologize properly." Charles's voice was resolute as he said, "I might reconsider." I took the divorce form from him, a rush of memories overwhelming me. I realized that throughout our marriage, I had never received genuine financial support from him or his family. I had been contributing equally to our living expenses, yet all the household chores fell squarely on my shoulders. Despite my tireless efforts, they had consistently treated me poorly. Now, they were trying to claim my father's money. The pressure to give up my father's inheritance if I stayed was immense. But the prospect of leaving suddenly seemed like an opportunity for a fresh start. Holding the divorce papers, I realized I had the power to shape my future. I vowed never to surrender my father's legacy and decided it was time to make a change. After a long day at work, I returned to my parents' house. "I'm home," I called out. My mother greeted me with a warm smile, and despite my exhaustion, a home-cooked meal awaited me on the table. It had been ages since I'd enjoyed a meal prepared by someone else, and with each bite of the delicious food, tears of gratitude welled up in my eyes. "Did you tell your husband about the inheritance?" my mother inquired. "Yes, and it caused quite a stir," I replied, recounting the demands made by my husband and mother-in-law. My mother listened in shock at the revelation. "The inheritance belongs to you, and you alone should decide your future," she comforted me gently as I cried. After a week of being cared for at my parents' home, I decided it was time to return to my in-laws' house. Armed with a renewed sense of strength, I said, "Well, I'm heading back now. Take care," I said confidently, no longer afraid to face the challenges ahead. As soon as I returned, my husband and mother-in-law confronted me, their expressions stern and arms crossed. "Have you reflected on your behavior?" they demanded. "Yes, I apologize. Please allow me to stay in the house," I offered, my apology more strategic than sincere. My mother-in-law's face lit up with anticipation. "Well then, hand over the inheritance quickly," she demanded. "The inheritance process is taking longer than expected. I haven't received it yet. It's a complex procedure, so it might take another 7 months or so," I explained, buying myself some time. 7 months? That long? My mother-in-law's disappointment was palpable. "Fine," she said reluctantly. Both my mother-in-law and husband seemed satisfied, thinking their plan was still on track, unaware of my determination to chart my own course despite their demands. I didn't hand over the inheritance, but they continued to nag me about spending a week at my parents' house. "You're neglecting your duties as a wife. The house is a mess. Clean it up quickly," they insisted. The state of disarray and unhygienic conditions at my in-laws' house after just a week was almost impressive. Previously, such chaos would have deeply upset me, but now it didn't bother me in the slightest. I carried out my mother-in-law's commands without letting it affect me emotionally. "It's my birthday, so I'll be leaving. Make sure to keep the house clean," my mother-in-law announced as she went on her annual trip to celebrate. Naturally, I wasn't invited. "By the way, have you received the inheritance yet? It's supposed to come in today," my husband inquired, hinting that the $5 million could make a splendid birthday present for his mother. "Don't forget to transfer it to Mom's account before we get back," my mother-in-law added. The timing of her birthday coinciding with the supposed arrival of the inheritance felt too convenient. As they left, I maintained a pleasant facade, bidding them a cheerful farewell. Once they were out of sight, I sprang into action, ready to execute the plan I had been formulating for so long. They were in for a surprise upon their return, but by then, I wouldn't have to concern myself with their reactions. I packed my belongings and left my husband's family home for good. As I moved into my new house, built with my father's inheritance, I couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow, this is incredible." The relief of finally living in a beautiful place of my own, free from the oppressive atmosphere of my in-laws' home, overwhelmed me. I decided to share this new beginning with my mother, who lived in my hometown. The sense of liberation from dealing with my in-laws was profound. Settling onto the plush sofa in my new living room, a contentment I hadn't felt in years washed over me. To celebrate, my mother and I indulged in a day of luxury, even hiring a chef to make the occasion special. The next evening, my phone rang. It was my husband, his voice thick with frustration. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, clearly baffled by the empty house he had returned to. "I won't be coming back. Goodbye," I stated firmly, hoping to end the conversation quickly. But then my mother-in-law's angry voice burst through the phone. "What are you doing? Where are you now?" she demanded. "You asked me to clean the house, so I packed up my belongings," I replied calmly, maintaining my composure despite her agitation. "That's not a funny joke. Plus, you didn't transfer the inheritance." "How many times do I have to tell you that a daughter-in-law's money is mine?" she shouted. "Huh? I'm single now, you know," I retorted, my patience wearing thin. "Single?" she echoed, confused. "Well, I'm divorced. I was handed a divorce paper, so I submitted it. I'm a stranger to you now. Goodbye." I ended the call abruptly, chuckling to myself at the thought of their stunned expressions. In the days that followed, I received numerous calls from my ex-husband. Whenever I had some free time, I answered the phone, calmly ignoring the insults from both him and my ex-mother-in-law. I recorded all these calls, planning to seek advice from the police. Harassment from an ex is unfortunately common, and I wanted to ensure my safety and peace of mind in my new life. The police acted promptly, visiting my ex-husband's family. The sight of the police at their doorstep was a significant blow, especially for my ex-in-laws who were concerned with maintaining a pristine public image. Additionally, a colleague of my ex-husband who lived nearby saw the police visit. Given my ex-husband's high-profile status, the news spread quickly. Resentful colleagues eagerly fueled the rumor mill, and soon, negative gossip about him circulated widely. At work, whispers about the police visit reached my department. "Did you hear about the police visit?" my colleagues whispered among themselves. "I'm divorced now, so I'm not really in the loop," I responded loudly enough for others to hear. The gossip-loving employees eagerly spread the news further. It didn't take long for the rumor to reach my ex-husband's boss. "You've been the subject of a lot of negative rumors," his boss remarked during a tense meeting. Caught off guard, my ex-husband could only protest. "What are you talking about? I can't tolerate men who don't appreciate their wives," his boss continued. "Furthermore, these damaging rumors could tarnish our company's reputation. Therefore, I've decided to transfer you." The transfer order was severe: a relocation to a branch office in a remote, least productive region, likened by some to a deserted island. "Do you understand what this means?" his boss added. Everything my ex-husband had worked for up to that point crumbled. There was no hope of advancement in the foreseeable future, and he had no option but to relocate. As for my ex-mother-in-law, she was likely shocked by her son's suddenly tarnished reputation and the dramatic changes that followed. The upheaval took a toll on her, leading her to become withdrawn and, over time, showing signs of depression. Her behavior became erratic, causing disturbances at home. My ex-father-in-law, now the primary caregiver for his significantly changed wife, often lamented about the situation. Despite the strained relations, he acknowledged that a daughter-in-law is still a valuable member of the family. The difficulties faced by my former in-laws seemed almost like poetic retribution for how they had treated me. Meanwhile, my life took a happier turn. Living with my mother, we took up gardening in our spacious backyard. This new hobby brought me immense joy and satisfaction, something I might never have discovered had I stayed in that oppressive household. Gardening revitalized my spirit and improved my physical health, which had deteriorated under the stress of living with my in-laws. I am grateful every day for the decision to sever ties with them and find true happiness and peace in my new life with my mother.